Hey folks, Ian here again. Welcome to my next video. Don't be that guy. Now I know, that's just kind of a general rule that everyone should know and everyone should adhere by. Just don't be that guy. Don't be the asshole that ruins the game for everyone else. That's literally what it boils down to. Don't be that guy. So, here's the story as to why I have that rule. I'm not going to go into the details of the rule because you know what the rule is. I'm going to tell you the story as to why I have that rule. And it's actually stressing me a little bit just thinking about it because even though this happened years ago now, it still irks me. Never mind the fact that, I'll admit some of it's my fault because I was going through a rough time in my life. I won't bore you with the details, but and I really needed friends at the time, and the guy I'm going to be talking about is or was one of my friends, but he did some stuff that made him become uninvited at the table. Uh, like shortly after all these events, he was removed from the gaming group because we couldn't trust him anymore. We just couldn't do it. Um, so I'm not going to use his real name. I'm going to call him Steve. So for the purpose of this video, the rule is don't be a Steve. Just don't. Don't be a Steve. Don't be a Steve. Steve would do stupid shit. Steve would do things that I would really want to strangle him for. But I can't. Because that would be rude. Sorry. Once again, stressing slightly. Because as I said, every time I think of this, it stresses me. So, let's go down the list of things Steve would do that labeled him as that guy. Number one, metagaming. So, when we first started playing Pathfinder, my friends called me up and said, "Hey, we want you to be our dungeon master. You have the most experience when it comes to D&D." I'm like, "Yes, but I've only played first and second edition and a bit of the original D&D. I haven't played Pathfinder." I was like, "Oh, don't worry, we have the books." I was like, okay. So, and those of you who don't know, Pathfinder is Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 extended. Uh, so, all the books belong to Steve. The Dungeon Master's Guide, the Core Rule Book, the Player's Handbook, and the Bestiary, and the Rise of the Rune Lords Adventure Path like mega book. And I'm like looking at the Adventure Path one, and I'm like, there's sticky notes sticking out of the sides of this. It's like, oh yeah. I've only read up to a certain part. I only just passed the goblin part. Don't worry about the sticky notes. So it's like, okay. So I read through the whole book. Actually, no, I didn't even read through the whole book. I ended up like thumbing through it, just get a bearings of everything. And I got like halfway through just, checking different things out, and I realized there's sticky notes throughout this entire book. He had marked every encounter and like every, puzzle or thing that you need to figure out, and he made a note of it. He didn't read through just the beginning part. He read through the whole book and marked everything. Actually, I don't even think I got halfway through the book. I think I got like through the first chapter, and I was like, something's not right. And I, flip through the whole book, and I see all these sticky notes. I mean, not like it matters. Like a year and a half later, I end up running Rise of the Rune, or not running, but being in a campaign for Rise of the Rune Lords. With DM running it, I didn't remember jack diddly shit because I ended up not using the book because I decided to pull, fast one on Steve and, completely make up a new adventure on the fly. Pulling it out my ass as I go, and, my players loved it. And Steve eventually asked me, it's like, "Why didn't you run Rise of the Rune Lords?" And I'm like, "Well, because there's sticky notes through it. I know for a fact that you read further than you did, and I'm not having that." Another thing he would do is competitive or rivalry with another player. And I mean, like, to a bad extent. Okay, so I'll give you the character names for everyone that was in this group. Salty Noah, Rohan, the dwarf cleric, and Phantasmio. Yes, Phantasmio. And then Steve. Steve's character at first was Jake the Fighter. Just a fighter from apparently another universe that was conquered by Cthulhu, and he wanted a way back so that way he could fight Cthulhu and uproot and destroy all gods. And you can see where my fun started. So, Steve had a permanent rivalry / competitiveness with Salty Noah. Now, he claims there was no rivalry, no competitiveness, but the truth is, it not only existed in this game, it existed in every game we played. Any board game, any tabletop game, or anything, he had a competitiveness with Salty Noah. And it was retarded. Now, I don't mean like, this person is, mentally handicapped and they deserve affection. No, I mean, this person had full control over their functions and they still did the most stupid things that you could think of. So, Steve would break the bro code and, do things to try and get Salty Noah in trouble with his wife. Never mind that Salty Noah really didn't do anything wrong. Steve would still try and get him in trouble with his wife, which is, that's a no. That's a no on all regards. No. I didn't kick Steve out at first because, like I said, I was in a time period where I needed friends. So, I let him stay. I was like, hey, I need you to back off some. He's like, well, I'm just enjoying the game. He's like, I don't care. Back off. Another thing he would do, aside from tormenting Salty Noah, is he was trying to be a rules lawyer. And I say trying because he failed miserably. Okay. For those of you out there, I don't mind rules lawyers. In a previous campaign that I ran, I had 2 of them. Excuse me. I had 2 of them. They were both very great at it, too. They weren't, assholes about it. They weren't like, oh, no, you can't do that. The rule says this. No, they were like, hey, Ian, just so you know, the rule says this. Are you sure this is what you want to do? I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot about that rule. I'm human. Tell me the rule again. Okay, thanks. So this is what actually happens because, this is the rule. No, Steve read through about half of the rule, and then, yeah. And I'm stressing again. Steve would read through half of the rule and then take only what he wanted from it. He didn't read the whole rule. Like, he'd read the first sentence or 2 and ignored, the prerequisites or other things he had to do or, the exceptions to the rules. But he'd constantly be like, hey, Ian, the rule says this. I'm like, hey, Steve, the rule also says this. So, like I said, he tried to be the rules lawyer. Failed, but he tried. And he was the asshole about it. He was also not willing to work with others. Like, if he didn't see it as directly benefiting him or making him the powerhouse of the party or anything like that, he didn't want to do it. Simple as that. He wanted to be the one-man party. He wanted a character that could do everything. And he sucked at it. And he made other people mad. He didn't make just Salty Noah mad. He made Rohan and Phantasmio mad with some of this crap. And he also did things that, on his own at the expense of others. Such as when Jake, his fighter, eventually put a level into Gunslinger, he convinced Salty Noah to go steal a gun for him from the shop in Magnamar. And, Salty Noah's like, okay, I'll get the gun for you if you back off some. And, Steve was like, sure, I'll do it. He didn't, but, he got the gun, and then, he starts shooting into combat without the, you know, essentially the feats that allow you to shoot in combat without hitting your friends. And he's like, well, if I'd roll better, it would be fine. I got these scientifically balanced dice that are supposed to be, better than normal dice. I was like, Steve, you wasted your money for one. Two, stop shooting into combat. You've hit the wizard, Phantasmio. You've hit the cleric, Rohan. You've almost hit Salty Noah. And you hit the paladin NPC I put with you guys. You hit the paladin twice. The paladin's about ready to kill you because of that. So, Salty Noah, Rohan, and Phantasmio all got together and determined, no, that gun needs to go away. So, Salty Noah stole it from him, replaced it with a pop gun, and, we continued on as if nothing happened. Steve, he was in the bathroom at that time when they decided to do that. And so, I had everyone do passive, or I didn't make them do passive. I made them all do perception checks when they got back. Steve rolled lower than Salty's sleight of hand, so it's like, okay, so he doesn't notice. And then once we get to combat again, there's the bridge is partially destroyed, so they can't go over the bridge, but there's a path winding down and over and winding back up. So Steve is like, well, I'm just going to use my grappling hook and get it to the struts above and just swing across. So he spends 3 rounds doing that, while the rest of the group just goes walking down the path below and, all that. Of course, it's an ambush. They end up getting ambushed and they get into combat. By that time, Steve finally gets across and, he's like, well, I'll just shoot down at them from up here because, I've got my pistol. So he pulls out his pistol and shoots. And realizes it's a pop gun and it's not really his gun. So then he spends his next rounds winding all the way down, going through combat, through essentially the back part of the bandits that were trying to ambush them, and ignoring them to go through them all to attack Salty Noah. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing. But he would attack Salty Noah, ignoring everyone else, and attacking a party member over, everything else. So, combat soon ends, and, Salty Noah's, doing his best to essentially outrun, outrun Steve. And finally the paladin breaks them up. It's like, hey, stop. See, the group entrusted the pistol to the paladin. It's like, look, we know we shouldn't have stolen it, but he's too dangerous with this thing. So, here's another thing that Steve would do. Instead of talking and finding a compromise between everything, he just constantly chanted, I want my gun, and then would attack. He attacked Salty Noah again. He attacked Phantasmio. He attacked the paladin. Once he attacked the paladin, I was like, okay, that's enough. The paladin proceeded to beat him down. He was 1 level higher. I put him essentially as a guide for, everyone. I had no real intentions of using him in combat very often. It was more, keeping them wrangled in. Mostly it was to keep Steve wrangled in, because the rest were fine. The paladin beat him down, which, the other party members helped, because it's like, no, this is done. So they render him unconscious, drag him for a while, bring him back to consciousness, try and talk to him again, and he immediately starts attacking the paladin again. So the paladin's like, okay, fine, I'm going to start breaking your stuff. The paladin sunders his armor, sunders his weapon, and just beats him down again. And they drag him for a bit more, and, heal him back, and it's like, okay. And he's like, I want my gun. And the paladin's like, look, you'll have your gun when I can trust you with it, when you can prove that you're trustworthy and you're not going to attack other people. And he's like, well, give me my gun, and, I won't attack anyone. And he's like, that's not how it works.